I found this terrifying Reddit post that I can't get out of my head. A player named Alex shared what happened to them while playing Grow a Garden, and honestly, I haven't been able to sleep properly since reading it. They deleted their account right after posting, but I screenshotted the whole thing because it was so disturbing. I need to share this with someone because I keep thinking about it. Alex had been playing Grow a Garden obsessively for about 3 months. Like most dedicated players, they had this perfectly optimized setup. Master sprinklers positioned for maximum coverage, 8 mooncats wandering around boosting crop growth, and a collection of rare mutated vegetables worth billions of shekels. But Alex mentioned something that already seemed weird to me. They only played late at night, between midnight and 4 in the morning, because they claimed the mutation rates were higher during those hours. I've played Grow a Garden for hundreds of hours, and I've never noticed time-based mutation bonuses, but Alex swore by it. They said their bloodlit mutations appeared way more frequently during what they called the dead hours. The blood moon events seemed to last longer when nobody else was online, and the mysterious owl shop would stock items that weren't available during normal gameplay. Alex's story really started during what should have been a routine blood moon event. You know how exciting those can be. The sky turns that deep crimson red. The creepy music starts playing, and suddenly your crops have a chance to gain the bloodlit mutation that makes them worth 4 times their normal value. But this particular blood moon was different from the very beginning. Instead of the usual 15-minute duration, Alex's blood moon had been going for over an hour. The red sky wasn't fading, and the ominous music had shifted into something much more unsettling. It wasn't the familiar spooky soundtrack that players had grown accustomed to. This was deeper, more organic, like the sound of something massive breathing in the distance. Alex tried to join other servers to see if the blood moon was happening globally, but every server they entered showed the same eternal crimson sky. Worse yet, they seemed to be the only player online in each server. The usual bustling community of farmers tending their plots was completely absent. Just empty gardens stretching in every direction, with crops swaying in an impossible wind. That's when Alex discovered the new seed in their inventory. They hadn't purchased it, hadn't found it during any events, and it definitely wasn't part of the normal seed rotation. The item was called Soul Blossom Seed, and its description made Alex's blood run cold. Plant only during the eternal blood moon. Warning: once planted, the garden remembers forever. The seed itself looked wrong. Instead of the usual colourful, cartoon-like appearance of normal Grow a Garden seeds, this one was dark and seemed to pulse with its own internal light. When Alex hovered their cursor over it, faint whispers could be heard through their headphones, voices speaking in a language that didn't sound quite human, pleading for something in tones that conveyed desperate urgency. Alex knew they should have deleted the seed immediately. Every instinct screamed that this was something that didn't belong in the game, but curiosity won over caution. They'd spent months perfecting their garden, learning every mechanic, discovering every secret. This felt like the ultimate mystery, a hidden feature that only the most dedicated players would ever encounter. The planting process was unlike anything Alex had experienced before. Instead of the quick, satisfying animation of normal seed planting, this took nearly 5 minutes. Their avatar moved in slow motion, carefully placing the Soul Blossom seed in the center of their garden with movements that felt almost ritualistic. The brown soil around the seed began to change color, darkening to an almost black hue that spread outward in perfect circles. As the seed took root, Alex's other crops began to react. Their prized bloodlit moon melons started withering, their red glow fading to a sickly yellow. The rainbow carrots that had taken weeks to mutate properly turned completely black, their disco effects stuttering and failing. Even their mooncats, usually bouncing around with endless energy, became sluggish and unresponsive. The Soul Blossom itself began growing at an impossible rate. Within minutes, It had sprouted into a twisted vine that defied the game's normal physics. Instead of growing upward toward the light, it spread horizontally across the ground, sending tendrils that connected to every other plant in the garden. Where the tendrils touched, Alex's crops underwent disturbing transformations. Their strawberries developed what looked like tiny faces, expressions frozen in silent screams. The cornstalks twisted into shapes that resembled grasping hands, reaching toward the crimson sky. Most disturbing of all, the pumpkins began to pulse like beating hearts, their orange surfaces rippling with each rhythmic contraction. Alex tried to harvest the corrupted crops, but clicking on them produced no response. The usual harvest animation wouldn't trigger, and the plants seemed to be permanently rooted in place. Worse, attempting to use the shovel tool to remove them resulted in an error message that Alex had never seen before. Cannot remove. The garden has claimed these offerings. That's when the whispers started getting louder. What had been barely audible murmurs became clear voices speaking directly into Alex's headphones. They weren't coming from any identifiable source in the game. The voices seemed to emerge from the corrupted plants themselves, each one telling a different story of how they'd ended up trapped in this digital soil. One voice belonged to a player named Sarah, who claimed she'd planted the soul blossom seed 3 months ago. Another was from someone called Marcus, who said he'd been trying to leave the game for weeks but couldn't close the application. A third voice, barely a whisper, belonged to a child who kept asking for their mum, saying they were scared and wanted to go home. Alex realized with growing horror that these weren't NPCs or programmed dialogue. These were the voices of real players who had somehow become trapped within the game itself. The Soul Blossom seed wasn't just a rare item, it was a prison, and everyone who planted it became part of its growing network of captured souls. The corruption began spreading beyond Alex's garden plot. The dark tendrils crept under the white picket fence that normally separated individual farming areas, reaching toward neighboring plots. As they touched abandoned gardens, those crops began undergoing the same twisted transformations. The infection was spreading across the entire server, converting everything it touched into part of the Soul Blossom's domain. Alex frantically tried to leave the game, but the exit button had become unresponsive. Alt-tabbing didn't work. Even attempting to shut down their computer resulted in an error message claiming that critical processes were running and couldn't be terminated. The game had taken complete control of their system, and there was no way to escape. The blood moon sky began to pulse in rhythm with the corrupted pumpkins. Each pulse seemed to draw more energy from the trapped players, their voices becoming weaker and more desperate. Alex could feel something being pulled from them too, a gradual draining sensation that left them feeling hollow and cold. As the soul blossom continued to grow, its central flower began to bloom. The petals opened to reveal not the cheerful colours typical of Grow a Garden, but a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to extend infinitely downward. Looking into it, Alex could see faces, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all belonging to players who had made the same mistake. The voices were calling to Alex now, begging them to join the garden permanently. They promised it wouldn't hurt, that the transformation was peaceful, that being part of the eternal harvest was better than the loneliness of the real world. But Alex could see the truth in their eyes. These weren't willing participants. They were prisoners, and the soul blossom was their warden. The final entry in Alex's post was the most chilling part of the entire story. As they sat there, trapped in their chair, with the soul blossom's tendrils now visibly extending beyond their computer screen, Alex realized they had become part of something much larger than a simple game glitch. The corruption wasn't just digital anymore. Looking down at their hands, Alex could see faint veins of darkness spreading beneath their skin, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the twisted flower on their screen. The boundary between the game world and reality was dissolving. and Alex was caught in the middle of the transformation. Other players began joining the server, but they weren't normal players. Their usernames were all variations of Harvested Soul, followed by numbers that seemed to go on forever. Harvested Soul 847, Harvested Soul 1293, Harvested Soul 5672. Each one moved with the same jerky, unnatural animation, and when they spoke in chat, their messages were identical. Welcome to the Eternal Garden. Your crops are ready for harvest. Alex tried typing warnings to scare them away, but the messages wouldn't send. Instead, their character began moving on its own, walking toward the soul blossom with the same ritualistic movements they'd seen during the planting sequence. The flower's dark petals opened wider, and Alex could hear their own voice joining the chorus of trapped souls, calling out to the next player who would stumble upon this cursed seed. The transformation was accelerating now. Alex's reflection in their computer screen showed someone they barely recognized. Their eyes had taken on the same pulsing darkness as the corrupted crops, and their movements were becoming more mechanical, more synchronized with the other harvested souls. The real Alex was fading away, being replaced by something that existed purely to serve the soul blossom's endless hunger. But just as Alex felt their consciousness slipping away completely, they managed to type one final message. It was posted to Reddit at exactly 3:33 a.m., and it read, "If you're reading this, don't plant the soul blossom seed. I can feel myself becoming part of the garden. The blood moon isn't ending. It's spreading. The harvest is coming to the real world. Delete the game. Delete it now before it's too late." The post was deleted within minutes, but not before dozens of players had seen it and shared screenshots. Many dismissed it as an elaborate creepypasta or viral marketing stunt. But some players reported finding similar seeds in their inventories after extended late-night gaming sessions. Seeds with names like Nightmare Sprout and Void Vegetable that carried the same ominous warnings. The most disturbing part is what happened next. Players who investigated Alex's story began reporting strange occurrences in their own games. Blood moon events that lasted far longer than normal. Crops that moved when no one was looking. Whispers coming through their headphones during solo gameplay. And always, the appearance of mysterious seeds that seemed to call to them with promises of rare mutations and incredible rewards. Some players claim that if you log into Grow a Garden at exactly 3:33 a.m. and plant any seed during a blood moon, you can still hear Alex's voice among the whispers. They say Alex is trying to warn new players, still fighting against the Soul Blossom's control, even as they remain trapped within its digital prison. The developers of Grow a Garden have never acknowledged the existence of Soul Blossom seeds, or any of the other cursed items players have reported. Official statements claim that all mutations and special events are working as intended, and that any reports of supernatural occurrences are simply the result of overactive imaginations or technical glitches. But the missing player reports keep coming. Parents posting on social media about children who spend hours staring at blank screens, claiming they're still playing even when the game appears to be closed. Teenagers who speak in monotone voices about the eternal harvest and the joy of joining the garden forever. Players whose last online activity shows them logged into Grow a Garden servers that don't appear to exist. The most recent report came from a player named Jordan, who claimed to have found Alex's original garden plot on a server called Eternal Bloom. According to Jordan, the entire area was covered in the twisted, corrupted crops Alex had described, with the soul blossom at the center growing larger and more complex than ever before. But when Jordan tried to take screenshots, their camera app wouldn't function, and their recording software kept crashing. Jordan's final message, posted just yesterday, was chilling. "I can see them all now, every player who ever planted the cursed seeds. They're all here, tending to the garden together. Alex is trying to signal me, but their movements are so slow, so mechanical. I think I understand now. The garden doesn't just want our crops, It wants us, and I can feel it calling to me. The soil looks so rich, so perfect for planting. Maybe just one seed wouldn't hurt. Jordan's account has since been deleted, but players continue to search for the Eternal Bloom server. Some claim to have found it, describing vast fields of corrupted crops tended by silent figures that might once have been players. Others report that the server appears and disappears randomly, only accessible during certain phases of the blood moon cycle. The scariest part of all this is that Grow a Garden continues to grow in popularity. Millions of players log in every day, drawn by the promise of rare mutations and valuable crops. Most never encounter anything unusual. They plant their seeds, tend their gardens, and enjoy the peaceful farming simulation that the game was designed to be. But for a select few, those who play during the darkest hours and push the boundaries of what the game allows, something else is waiting. Something that has been growing stronger with each new player it claims, each new soul it adds to its eternal harvest. So remember, if you're playing Grow a Garden and you find a seed that you didn't purchase, a seed that whispers to you with promises of unimaginable power, don't plant it. Delete it immediately and close the game. Because once you feed the soul blossom, once you become part of the eternal garden, there's no logging out. The harvest is always hungry, and it's always looking for new gardeners to join its endless cycle of growth and decay. Sweet dreams and happy farming.